Good evening. Hello, I'm Reverend Dr. Jeffrey Goodine, pastor of Church on Wheels Spoken Word out of Deltona, Florida, and this is another edition of Bible Study 2025. We are continuing our Bible study in the book of John. Tonight we're going to do John chapter 6. So if you got your Bibles or your electronic device, John chapter 6. I want to thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you all for not thinking it robbery to take time out of your busy schedule to be with us tonight. Those of you that are tuning in on the airways, like us on YouTube at Pastor Jeffrey Goodine. Subscribe and hit the bell to be notified. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on our Facebook group page, Church on Wheels, Let the Good News Roll. Facebook Live, Jeffrey Goodine. X, which is formerly Twitter, at Goodine Jeffrey. Instagram, Goodine Jeffrey. And Clubhouse, Church on Wheels Ministry. Tonight, we are continuing again in John, in our book of John, and our Bible studies on the book of John. And remember, John speaks of the deity of Christ. That is the whole thing about the book of John. The book of John is on the deity of Christ. It shows his deity. He presents Christ from a deity, a supreme being, the Holy One, however you want to take a look at it. That is the book of John. So tonight, we are going to look at tonight. I forgot. Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Clubhouse. Send me an email to pastorjeffreygoodine@gmail.com. That's pastorjeffreygoodine@gmail.com. I'll add you to the list and you'll get a copy of the handout so that you can follow along with us in Bible study. pastorjeffreygoodine@gmail.com. That's pastorjeffreygoodine@gmail.com. I'll add you to the list. You can get a copy of the handout so you can follow along with us in Bible study. Tonight, we got a very familiar text. Very familiar text. And I put here math beyond comprehension. If you kind of see what I'm saying, and if you look at the topic of it, math beyond comprehension. Now, you know, some of us can do math very well. Some of us not so well, but I tell you one thing, we surely know how to count. I can tell you that's one thing my daddy taught me. Count your own money. Don't have nobody else count it. Count your own money. And so I used to teach my kids when they're growing up, you know, when you pay the people, do you have the right change? Count your money and see if you got the right change. Because if they don't, you know, sometimes people cheat you. You know, they do it all day long, and sometimes, you know, they count wrong. You know, they count wrong.
Sometimes they give you more.
Right, sometimes they give you more. Now, I don't know if that's a blessing or whatever, but, you know, you take it for what it's worth. So, tonight is math beyond comprehension. And this is taken John chapter 6. And I put 5 plus 2 divided by 5,000. 5 plus 2 divided by 5,000. Now, from that topic, you kind of already know. Well, you know, if you don't, then go to John chapter 6. And Matthew talks about it. Luke talks about it. Mark talks about it. Feeding of the 5,000. That's why I said math beyond comprehension. And there's a key element in this that I want to pull out tonight. There's a key element in this. And we'll get to that. We focus it on verse 11. We said, and Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed to his disciples, and the disciples to them that were set down, and likewise the fishes as much as they would. In other words, that he took them, gave thanks, distributed. Now, you got to look at what he says. He gave thanks and he distributed to the people, and did the same thing with the fish, and they all ate as much as they wanted. Now, let's back up to the verse 1. It says, after these things, Jesus went. Oh, I'm reading from the King James Version. After these things, Jesus went over the Sea of Galilee, which is the Sea of Tiberias. And a great multitude followed him because they saw his miracles, which he did on them that were diseased. So they coming after Jesus because of his miracles. This is why, remember back when Jesus told the people, why are you all calling me? You want to see miracles, but you're not listening to my word. You're waiting for the next wow. But you're not listening to my teaching. So that's why he was a little reluctant to help whatever the bigwig guy, magistrate or whatever it was, when he came to Jesus and tell him that this child lay sick. And Jesus said, y'all not following my word. All y'all want to do, a lot of y'all follow me, all y'all want to do is just see the next big why. Well, here is the next big why. It's because the Bible says that the multitude followed him because they saw his miracles. So that's why they're following him. And Jesus went up into the mountain and he sat with the disciples. At the Passover, a feast of the Jews was nigh, which was the second Passover, was close. Well, here's what happens. When Jesus lifted up his eyes and saw a great company come unto him, he said unto Philip, when shall we buy bread, that these may eat? And this he said to prove him, for he himself knew what he would do. Philip answered him, 200 pennyworth of bread is not sufficient for them, that every one of them may take a little. And one of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, saith unto him, there is a lad here, which has 5 barley loaves and 2 small fishes. But what are they among so many? Now I want you to understand, let's get at that. There were a lot of people, but only meager, small provisions in their eyes. In their eyes. So, in the handout, number 1, crowds followed Jesus wherever he went. Why? It's because they noticed his miracles. So automatically they look at Jesus as someone great. But they followed him because they were expecting to see another miracle. See, if we follow Jesus only for what we're going to get, what happens when he don't give you nothing? What happens if you don't get out the trouble? What happens if you don't get what it was you were asking for? Because you're looking for the next great wow instead of listening to his word. And that's where a lot of us fall. We know he did it before, and we know he did it before. But we're following him, or we call on him when we need. He's saying, follow me and for the word. And we don't, a lot of us don't do that. We follow him for the next big wow to happen in our life. Well, what happens? Let me ask you this. What happens if the wow don't come? His word is still there. The healings, the wow, that's what it is. The wow. But it's the daily things that go on. They tell, people that you got that one big contract But what about the small contracts that were keeping you afloat? And all of us work to that one big contract. That's the big one that's going to get us over the hump. But don't forget about the small ones. Don't forget about those people, because those were the ones that carried you when you didn't have the wow. So what Jesus is saying, if you listen to my word on a daily basis, that will carry you until you see the next miracle. Well, here, crowds followed Jesus wherever he went. People couldn't get enough of his healing miracles. Now, you know, the Bible saying that they were waiting for his miracles. So nobody was paying attention to his word. I mean, not nobody, but majority of them weren't paying attention to his word. When he crossed the Sea of Galilee and headed for a remote hillside for some alone time, 5,000 men, along with an untold number of women and children, joined him. But only one of them packed food for the journey. A young boy carried 5 barley loaves and 2 small fish. Now, said the hilly location was miles and miles away from any place that sold food. If such a place could be found, the disciples couldn't pay for a party of 5,000 men plus women and children. So they even though they did find some, they didn't have the means to do it. Now I want you to understand what he's saying here. Even Andrew said that he got 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what are they among so many? What is 5 loaves of barley and 2 fish going to do for 5,000 men plus women and children? Plus women and children. And Jesus said, make the men sit down. So if the men sit down, then the women and the children will sit down also. So he said, now there was grass in the place, so the men sat down in number of about 5,000, the Bible says. And Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed to the disciples, and the disciples to them that were set down. And likewise the fishes as much they would. As I say, Andrew did the only thing he could think of at the time. When in dire situations, you got to do what you got to do. And so he brought the boy with the loaves and fish to Jesus. Now, this is very important. Now, I want you to kind of look at this. What is the first thing Jesus did? He took the boy's food, and what did he do? He gave thanks. He blessed it. Now, a little bit before that, Andrew said, we only got 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. What is that? That's not going to do anything. It's not going to do anything. And Jesus took it and blessed it. He gave thanks. And it put here, no matter how meager the resources might have seemed, they were a gift from God. And he treated it like one. He's like, he looked around and we ain't got nothing. But we got something. We got something. See, a lot of times when we say we ain't got, I'm telling you when you say when you ain't got nothing. Sitting around the house, you're hungry, you go to the cupboard full. What's the thing we say? Ain't nothing here to eat.
None that we want to eat.
Yeah, nothing here to eat. You know, I mean, and it's there. Because that's not what we want. But if you notice here, Jesus didn't give them what they expected. He gave them what they needed. See, he's not here to fulfill our expectations. He's here to fulfill our needs. And everybody needed to eat. So he took the food, treated it like a gift from God, which is what it was. And then he broke off piece after piece. Piece after piece of the loaves and 2 fish, handed to the disciples to distribute. And they didn't stop until all had been fed. Now, some people say, well, how can 5 barley loaves and 2 pieces of fish, that won't feed my family? I mean, I don't know. But the Bible says everybody ate. Now,
they had enough to eat.
Right. They were all filled.
They eat their fill.
Yeah.
They had their fill.
Yeah.
So that means that when he gave thanks, when he gave thanks, God made it stretch first. That's why I say in tithing thing, when they say the 10%, you give 10 cents out the dollar, he will make that 90 cents go further than that dollar ever will. He'll take that 90 cents, take your dime in tithe, and he will take that 90 cents that's left over and make it go further than that dollar ever will. You stretch it. Make it work. And after you pay all your bills, bought your food, and do everything at that 90 cents, and you got a penny left over, you to the good. You ain't had to ask nobody for nothing. Everything was taken care of, your family was taken care of, and you still had a penny left over. And you say, well, how did that happen? You know how it happened. You just said once, you know how it happened. You know exactly how it happened. Because you, in that moment when nobody was looking, you went to him in private. And you said, I paid my tithe, I only got 90 cents. But it seems like I got more month than money. And then you say, don't worry about it. I got this. And then that gets paid, that gets paid, that gets paid. You get food in the house, this, that, and the other. And then you look up and you got a penny left. And now you say, well, how could that happen? Everything's paid. Everything's paid. We're eating, roof over our head, and we got everything. And the 90 cents, I had to use it, but I still got money left over. I still got money left over. Now, and we've all been this way. We get the dollar. We don't put nothing in church. We don't pay our tithes off of that. Guess what? Poof, it's gone. You said, well, where the money went?
And we're 2 cents short.
Yeah, and we end up 2 cents short. Where the money went? It poof, it's gone. But he said, I'll protect it from the devourer. So here, he gave 5 barley loaves, 2 pieces of fish, and he gave to 5,000 men plus women and children. Now, it didn't say how many, women and children, but I can tell you this, if they were married, then that's 10,000 people there. If every one of those married. All right, let's just say half of them were married. That's 2,500 married. That's 57, but 5, 7, 2, 5, 7, 5, 750. 5,750. We ain't talking children now. That many people. 7,000. Sorry, 5,000, 7,250. Yeah, 2,500. 2,500. 5,000, 2,500. 7,500. I think I get that math right. Let me get my fingers. Yeah. Math, 2,000 carried to 19. Okay, we got it. Okay.
I think you gotta add,
It was a lot of people.
you gotta add kids for
Yeah, and we ain't even had the kids yet.
They may have at least
Yeah.
one.
So you talking about, so you talking well over 10,000 people. Let's just say we just do the math, okay?
Round it up.
With 5 barley loaves and 2 pieces of fish. And he fed over 10,000 people, and they were filled. All of them were fed. That's why I say math beyond comprehension. What? What? You've been a part of the math beyond comprehension. You just ain't telling nobody. You know that. You've been in that situation before, where you didn't have it and you called on him, and for some reason you end up having it. You only had a little bit to start with, and then you found out that was enough.
And you more excited about that one penny that left over?
Yeah, that penny that's left over, boy, that should be, that you should, jump for joy. That all of that 90 cents that I had to pay, and I had to pay because he said you will not, your vine will not cast up fruit before the time in the field. That means that 90 cents, you're not going to spend that 90 cents until you need it. You're going to use that when you need it. And then at the end, you still got a penny left over, which means that you started out where you thought you had more month than money. Now, Jesus said, you got more money than month. And he works. So, he broke off pieces and he gave it 5 loaves, 2 fish, handed it to the disciples to distribute. And he didn't stop until all were fed. And then says when they were, verse 12. Now, verse 12 is kind of, when they were filled, he said to the disciples, gather up fragments that remain, that nothing be lost. So he had fragments. And he said, therefore they gathered them together and filled 12 baskets with the fragments of the 5 barley loaves, which remained over and above unto them that had eaten. So not only did he feed over 10,000 people, but he still had 12 baskets of stuff left over. So now 5 barley loaves, 2 fish, feeding over 10,000 people, and then you still had 12 baskets left over. Now everybody's filled now. And then it said 14, then those men, when they had seen the miracle that Jesus did, said, this is of a truth that prophet that should come into the world. Now, some of these men saw other miracles he had done. So this was the next big wow that they saw. Now, I say to those men, what does it take for you to start believing in Jesus? I mean, what is it going to take? You've already seen the miracles he's done. You've seen what he's done in your life. And what do? You waiting for the next big wow? Well, what happens when the next big wow comes? What are you going to do? What does he have to do to make you follow him? You've seen it. You've seen the miracles in your life. You've seen the miracles in your life. What a little boy had to offer was more than enough to impact thousands of people. See, sometimes we think the little bit we got. See, the little bit we do impacts a lot of people. So you do your little bit, I do my little bit, then before you know it, we've done a lot. But if each of us do our little bit, as it say, each one reach one. You ain't got to reach 10 people, just reach one. And tell them about Jesus Christ. Just reach one. And then he'll reach somebody. Or they'll reach somebody. And it goes on and on. And sooner or later, everybody will be a follower of Jesus Christ. Now, Easter's coming up. Jesus is rising late this year. He got to sleep in. So he's not coming up until April.
He was early last year.
Yeah, last year was early. So this year is kind of late. Do you know how many people believe in Jesus Christ around Easter time? I mean, think about it.
More than the rest of the year.
Yeah. People who don't go to church will go out and buy an outfit just to wear to church on Easter Sunday. And they'll tell you about Jesus. You know, you might get little details, out of whack and so, but still, they got the gist of it. But where are they the rest of the year? I mean, if you one of them, then where are you the rest of the year?
Fishing.
Yeah, the next big wow. See, if you only come during Easter time, which is the wow of him resurrecting from the dead, that's the wow. But what about his word throughout the year? You missed that. So what the little boy had to offer was more than enough to impact thousands of people. Jesus helped his followers see that it's not how much you have that matters, but rather who's distributing it. See, if the little boy, if Andrew had taken the loaves and the fish and tried to distribute, I guarantee he might would have got the 5 people, and that would have been about it. So it's not what we got, it's who's distributing. It's that Jesus is distributing it. And Jesus blessed it. He blessed it. He thanked God for it. And it multiplied. And what seems inadequate to us may be just enough to accomplish something incredible. That's part of our downfall. Our human thought pattern is finite. God is infinite. So you see the gap? This is the best we got. And guess what? That is filthy rags. This is the best we got. This is the best that man got right here. This is the best. No, you ain't up there. No, you're not. You're right here. This is the best. Well, if that's the best of mankind, and our thought process is finite, God is here. Infinite. Infinite. We don't comprehend this gap right here. There's no way for us to comprehend that. There's no way for us to comprehend how Jesus can bless food and make it feed over 10,000 people and have stuff left over. Started out with meager things, as we would say. Meager provisions. But he did something extraordinary. That's why I say math beyond comprehension. If you had, you've read this thing. If not, go to John 6 and read it. Over 5,000 men. Let's start with the 5,000 men. And you got 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. And you're going to try to feed 5,000 men? Now, we're not even talking to the women about the women and children now. We let's just not talk about that for the moment. Let's get to 5,000. You know you're not going to go anywhere with that. But what seemed inadequate to Andrew, Jesus saw it as a gift from God. See, it doesn't matter what we got. It's a gift from God. Now, if you try to take what you got and compare it to what somebody else got, that may not be for you. Probably not. It's not for you. It's not for you. Remember, if the grass is greener, the water bill is higher. Trust me. I know. If the grass is greener, the water bill is higher. Are you willing and able to pay that water bill? If not, well, then your grass will look like mine. So, let's get to the gist of this. In verse 15, this is what Jesus was, why he didn't want to do the miracle to save the man's child. Because he said, you all, if when I come, why you come to me? You come to me for this, and I'm here to spread the word of my Father, but you only see me as a miracle worker. And that's not what I want. That's not what I want. But he heals anyway. He's saying, but that's not what I want. I'm here to spread the Father's word. And if I have to do a miracle in the meantime, then that's not that. But I'm not here. I'm here to save the lost. I'm not here to condemn. I'm here to save the lost. But we want him to do the why. So, verse 15, when Jesus therefore perceived that they would come and take him by force to make him a king, he departed again into the mountains himself alone. Now, he perceived that they were looking at him not for his word, but to make him a king. And he said, no, they wanted him to fight against the Roman rule. They thought, and when we get on Palm Sunday, the entrance into Jerusalem, they thought he was coming in to take over, to protect them from Roman rule. Remember Jesus' famous word, give Caesar what Caesar's, and give God what God. Give Caesar what's his, and then you give God what's his. So you see, he wasn't there to protect them from Roman rule, which is what they expected. It's what they expected. And it said after witnessing, after witnessing Jesus' miracle, the crowd got overly excited and tried to make him their king. They wanted somebody. They imagined him using his powers against the Roman Empire. But Jesus had a much greater role to fulfill. And so he quietly slipped away into the hills for some much needed alone time. And I read this somewhere in one of my studies about this. He had met the people's needs, but he had no interest in meeting their expectations. See, God, he wants to meet our needs, not our expectations. What do you expect of Jesus? I mean, come on. Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Clubhouse, Congregate, anybody that can hear me. What do you expect of Jesus? Now, are those expectations your needs or your wants? Now you're going to have to break that down. Is it going to, what I'm expecting from Jesus, is that a need or is that a want? Well, if it's a need, it'll probably be met. It'll probably be met. Yes, it will. But your expectation may not get fulfilled. So you see, Jesus, he had met their needs, but not their expectations. When he met their needs by feeding them when they were hungry, but then they expected him to be a king to come in and help them against the Roman rule. Again, even the people are looking at him from a deity perspective, but they want to use him as their king to fight against the Roman rule. And that's not what Jesus said. That's why he was reluctant when we talk back about the highfalutin man, I forgot who was. His son was sick. His child was sick. His child was sick. And Jesus said, you come to me, why? You want me to do this, but you're not listening to my word. That's why he was reluctant to do those things. And he was reluctant to change the water to wine. You know the first miracle that he did? He was reluctant to do that because he knew that if I change this water to wine, if I make wine come, guess what they're going to be doing from now on? They want Jesus to come to the party. Because when we run out, when we run out of wine, boy, we going to have some wine. And it's going to be top shelf. But nobody's listening to his word. So when they saw the next wow, they wanted to make him king. They wanted to make him king. And so Jesus, he met their needs, but not their expectations. So that's why I ask you, what do you expect of Jesus? What are your expectations of Jesus? Now that's a question you have to answer. And your expectations of him, is it a need or a want? They wanted a king. They wanted to make him king. No. But when they were hungry and they needed to be fed, Jesus met that. See, when you're hungry and when you need, Jesus will meet that need. Now, I don't know. You say you need a vehicle. All right, sweet. But you want a Cadillac. Jesus might say, well, here, I'll give you a vehicle to get you from point A to point B. Might get to C and back, but you don't know. But you expected him to give you a Cadillac. And then when he don't give you a Cadillac, then you say, well, what's the use of following? He satisfied your need, not your expectation. Because our expectations a lot of times are wants and not needs. He will meet our needs. So that's why I say the math beyond comprehension. He met the people's need with the math problem that nobody can comprehend. How do you take 5 loaves of bread and 2 pieces of fish and feed over 10,000 people? Now I'm just trying to math, just trying to throw some numbers out. But I know there were 5,000 men. The Bible says 5,000 men, and then they put plus women and children. So if every one of those were married, that's 10,000 people. And if each one of those couples had a child, that's 15,000 people. So you see how quickly this multiplies. So Jesus, he perceived that they wanted to make it. He knew that they were getting ready to rush him, grab him, take him down, and place him before the Roman rule and say, yes, here, Jesus, protect us from the Romans. Protect us from Roman rule. And he didn't want to do that. So he left. And he went back up into the mountains by himself. Verse 16 says, and when even was now come, which is the evening, his disciples went down into the sea and entered into a ship. And they went over the sea toward Capernaum. And it was now dark, and Jesus would not come to them. And the sea arose by reason of a great wind that blew. So when they had rowed about 25 or 30 furlongs, they see Jesus walking on the sea and drawing nigh unto the ship, and they were afraid. They didn't know who it was. See, sometimes in our desperation, when we see something walking toward us, we are afraid. So that night when his disciples couldn't find him, they got into their boat and rowed back across the Sea of Galilee without him. They didn't get far. The Sea of Galilee was known for its sudden violent storms. It sits 600 feet below sea level. When the sun sets and the air cools, the wind rushes from the west and churns the waves. The disciples were headed west toward Capernaum. So they were heading directly into the storm. After several hours of rowing, they had made it only halfway. You know, a lot of us are going into the storm with no protection, with nothing, no covering. We're headed into the storm. Remember what back when the children came over, when Joshua brought them over, where did he lead them? He led them to the River Jordan. He led them to the River Jordan. They couldn't cross. So he led them into a situation where they had to see his power. He told them, stop. Then I'll show you my power. Then he led them where? To their Jericho, where they got the silly command. But he led them to the Jericho. So now we see that the disciples supposed to be following Jesus. They headed right into a storm. Right into the storm. But then they see Jesus walking on the sea. Now, another version of this says that Jesus was walking, and he was walking by them. He was going to pass them by. That's, I think it's in Mark. That when you read that, it reads that Jesus was walking past them. They didn't know who he was. So when they had rowed about 5 and 20 or 30 furlongs, they see Jesus walking on the sea and drawing nigh unto the ship. And they were afraid. Why? They didn't know him. They didn't know him. But he said unto them, it is I. Be not afraid. Then they willingly received him into the ship. And immediately the ship was at the land, whither they went. So during the storm, and I put something here, and I want you to see this. If you have the handout, you'll see this. But I'm going to tell you the thing that I put out. The physical conditions that held back the disciples had no effect on Jesus. No matter what the storm was, they couldn't row, but it had no effect on Jesus. Jesus was walking on the water. Had no effect on him. He walked across the water toward the disciples. And I put this in bold and I underline it. In the darkness, they couldn't see that their salvation was coming. See, in our darkest moment in our lives, we can't see that our salvation is coming. In our darkest moment, when the storms are around us and there's no light and it's just complete darkness, our salvation is on the way. See, they didn't realize that them being caught in a storm, that their salvation was on the way. See, we don't believe that when it's dark and it's our darkest moment, at our lowest moment, and we've been there multiple times. If you don't think you've been there, sit down after this Bible study, because I only got a little bit of time left. So sit down after Bible study and think back over your life and look at all those dark moments where you didn't know, you had no idea. So in this moment, I put in the darkness, in the midst of the storm, in the darkness, they couldn't see that salvation was coming. See, we can't see that, but he's coming. He's coming. But if you don't accept him as your Lord and Savior, why does he have to come? You don't come to a non-believer. So in your darkest moment, in your darkest moment, salvation is on the way. You might not believe it, because you might not feel that way. But if you believe in Jesus Christ, if you accept him as your Lord and Savior, then you understand the math beyond comprehension. Then you understand how he can do what he do. And here, in the midst of the storm, now these are disciples now. These aren't the people that he fed on the mountainside. These are his disciples. These are the people that are following him. And they got in a storm. They headed right toward the storm. And in the darkness, in the midst of the storm, which is your darkest moment, I want you to know that your salvation is on the way, even though you can't see it. Even though you can't see it. You know why? Because what did Jesus? Jesus said, you follow me. The path that we getting on is a dark path. And the only way you're going to get through this path is you have to trust me. Now that other path over there is well lit. You already know what that path is on. You done been down that way before. But Jesus said you got to trust me. You got to trust me. He knows which way to go. So, in our darkest hour, salvation is coming. So, but he said unto them, it is I, be not afraid. They thought the figure approaching them across the water was a ghost. I don't know. Look, in the midst of a storm, and you see somebody coming your way,
And it's on water.
and it's on water,
Right.